She was just a maid. I was just a boy with a broken past. We weren't supposed to fall in love. But we did, and it ruined everything. At the beginning of the story, we meet a 17-year-old boy named Jack, who lives in another city, far from his family. After his mother's death, Jack's father remarried, which deeply upset him. Unable to cope with the situation, he ran away from home and started living with his uncle in another city. A few years later, his uncle advised him to reconnect with his father and rebuild their relationship. Jack agreed and decided to visit his father's house during his school holidays. When Jack arrives, his father, David, greets him warmly, but Jack is indifferent. While David repeatedly calls him son, Jack dislikes it and firmly tells him not to before heading to his room. Later, while smoking a cigarette, Jack notices a beautiful girl outside the window. Curious, he goes downstairs for a drink. Just then, David approaches him and introduces the girl as Maria, the housemaid. He calls Maria over and formally introduces her to Jack. After David's death, Jack and Maria begin talking. One day, Maria asks Jack about his mother. This question angers Jack, and he abruptly walks away. Realizing she upset him, Maria follows him to his room and apologizes, saying she didn't know he disliked talking about his mother. Jack responds bitterly, saying, "My father never told you about my mother because he was too busy chasing other women. That's why I hate him." Saying this, he grabs his camera and leaves the house. He heads to the forest to take photographs. While there, a passing couple catches his attention, and the girl smiles at him, but Jack ignores her. That evening, when he returns home, Maria informs him that her work is done and she will be leaving. Jack apologizes for his earlier behavior, explaining that his anger was directed at his father, not her. Maria sits beside him and asks, "Can you tell me about your mother now?" Jack sighs and replies, "My mother left as soon as I was born." Surprised, Maria says, "I thought David was divorced." Jack clarifies, "Yes, he was, but that was his second wife. My father has always been obsessed with women. You must already know that." Hearing this, Maria looks hurt and walks away. The next day, while Jack is in the forest taking pictures, he meets the same girl who had smiled at him earlier. She introduces herself as Becky and tells him she's heard that he is a professional photographer. Jack, uninterested, coldly responds, "What do you want?" "I'm not interested in talking to you." Meanwhile, Maria passes by on her bicycle, and Jack's face lights up when he sees her. Becky, noticing this, gets annoyed and invites Jack for coffee, but he declines and walks away. When he returns home, he sees Maria sitting outside, reading a book. He quietly starts taking photos of her. Later, in the kitchen, he follows her inside. Maria smirks and says, "This isn't a movie where the maid falls for her master." Then, teasingly, she adds, "Just so you know, I have a boyfriend, and I love him a lot." Jack, visibly disappointed, walks away. Maria follows him and laughs, saying, "I was just kidding." She then asks him, "Why do you dislike your father so much?" Jack sighs. "Because he never acted like a father. I spent my whole life with my uncle. That's why I don't even want to call him my father." Maria nods sympathetically. "I understand. Parents have the power to shape their child's life, for better or worse. Maybe your father was the latter." Jack looks at her curiously. "Do you have a child?" Maria shakes her head. "No, I'm not even married." They continue talking, and Jack realizes he enjoys Maria's company. He rarely opens up to anyone, yet he has shared everything with her. As they grow closer, Jack one day shows Maria a picture of his mother and tells her, "You look just like her." Maria playfully asks, "Is that why you want to be intimate with me?" Jack, angered by her comment, storms back inside the house. Maria follows him, apologizing. "I was just teasing you. Don't take it seriously." Jack, still upset, changes the subject. "Do you have a boyfriend?" Maria hesitates before responding. When I was 17, I fell in love with a boy. He got me pregnant. But when I told him, he abandoned me. She pauses and sighs. Looking back, I think it was my fault. I should have fought for my child. Hearing this, Jack moves closer to her. Maria looks at him and whispers, "We are the same." Just then, David interrupts them, announcing that he has to leave for a week-long business trip to Paris. "I'll spend time with you when I return," he promises Jack. Jack scoffs. "Don't worry, I'm used to it." With that, David leaves for Paris. That night, Maria tries to console Jack. "Forget the past," she tells him. Jack shakes his head. "It's not that easy. My father abandoned me after my mother's death. I waited for him to love me, but that day never came." Maria responds, "David has changed. He regrets his mistakes. Maybe you should give him another chance." They sit together and watch a movie, but Jack is distracted, his eyes constantly drifting toward Maria's legs. He abruptly leaves and locks himself in his room, staring at Maria's picture while satisfying himself, unable to forget her. He tells her, "Day and night, whether I'm awake or asleep, I keep thinking about you. Can we be together again?" Maria responds, "That's not possible." Jacob replies, "That's okay, but I will still wait for you," and then leaves. Meanwhile, Jack is secretly listening to their entire conversation. After Jacob leaves, Jack approaches Maria and stares at her intensely. Maria smiles and says, "Happy birthday." Jack grins and says, "That's not how you wish someone. I need a gift." Maria apologizes, saying, "I'm sorry, I forgot your gift." Jack responds, "I want to be intimate with you." Maria is shocked but laughs it off. However, Jack moves closer and says, "We are the same, and you were made for me." Maria says, "You're misunderstanding. I only see you as a friend." Jack replies, "I heard everything you and Jacob talked about. Maybe you still love him." Maria denies it, but Jack presses on, "Then what's the problem?" "I love you." Maria reminds him, "You used to see me as a mother figure. What changed?" Jack insists, "I just want to be intimate with you," and moves closer, trying to touch her. Maria slaps him hard and warns, "Don't ever do this again." Just then, the doorbell rings. Maria opens the door and sees Becky standing there. Jack immediately invites Becky for coffee, which makes Maria jealous. Later, when Jack and Becky are out together, Becky confesses, "I've been following you for days." Jack asks, "You've been stalking me?" Becky replies, "Yes, because I want to be intimate with you." Jack tells her, "Today is my birthday." Becky kisses his cheek and says, "My house is nearby. My parents aren't home. If you want, you can come over." But Jack refuses because he only loves Maria. When he returns home, he finds Maria crying. Jack asks, "If you don't love me, why are you crying?" Maria has no answer. Jack moves closer and says, "I know you love me too." He starts touching her again. Maria pushes him away and sits in the other room. Jack follows her. Maria says, "We have no future together. You're much younger than me, and we can never be one." Jack insists, "I don't care about that. I just want to be intimate with you." Since Maria also desires intimacy with him, she grabs him and kisses him passionately. They become intimate. Afterward, Maria tells Jack, "You should talk to your father. You can't hate him forever." Jack agrees, saying, "When he visits, I will talk to him." Maria then goes to the kitchen to make juice. Jack follows her and tries to get intimate again, but before they can, David arrives. David wishes Jack a happy birthday and gives him a gift. Before leaving, he invites Jack to dinner. He also asks Maria to join, but she declines because she wants Jack to spend time with his father. Since Maria refuses, Jack also declines and goes to his room. Maria follows him and reminds him, "You promised me you would talk to your father. Now you have to go." While saying this, she kisses him repeatedly. She tells him, "If you go out with David tonight, tomorrow we will spend the entire day being intimate." Hearing this, Jack happily agrees. That night, he meets David and finally expresses his feelings, revealing why he resents him. Jack says, "You never even loved my mother. That's why you remarried right after her death." David explains, "I did it for you. I didn't want you to grow up without a mother's love. No matter how much a father tries, he can never replace a mother's love." David admits, "I know I made many mistakes. I couldn't give you the love you deserved, but I'm here now. If you give me a chance, I will make things right." Jack replies, "There's no need for that anymore. I've learned to live without you." With that, Jack goes to sleep. David says goodnight and leaves. The next morning, when Jack wakes up, he finds that David has already left. Jack waits outside for Maria. When she arrives, she asks, "Did you talk to David?" Jack replies, "Yes. And that conversation changed a lot." Maria starts heading inside, but Jack stops her and reminds her, "You said we would be intimate today." Maria says, "I have work to do." Jack insists, "I'll be leaving in a few days. Stay with me today." They go to a park and talk for a long time. Later, Maria brings Jack home. As they are about to be intimate again, Maria suddenly starts crying. She reveals, "I had gone looking for my child. After some time, I finally found out where he was. But when I reached there, I learned that he had died in an accident." Jack comforts her and reminds her, "You told me we should forget the past and start fresh." After this, they become intimate again. Afterward, they confess their love for each other and continue being intimate. That evening, when Jack returns home, David is waiting for him. David says, "At least think about what I told you yesterday." Jack says nothing and leaves. A few days later, the time comes for Jack to return home. Before leaving, he meets Maria, and they become intimate one last time. They bid each other goodbye. As Jack is about to get into his car, David hugs him and calls him, "son." This time, Jack does not resist, implying that he has finally forgiven David. Maria then goes to her mother's house. Upon seeing her, Maria's mother starts crying. Maria hugs her, showing that she has also forgiven her mother. A few months pass, and Maria is now pregnant with Jack's child. And with this, the story comes to an end.